Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Happy April 13th. We are coming to you live from Bloomerang headquarters in Indianapolis, Indiana, where it's a beautiful sunny spring day, finally and at last. So today's session is on your new dashboard and the donor retention tools that we've recently upgraded. This is a class that we've been offering for the whole 3 years of Bloomerang Academy's history, but we've got some really exciting developments on the dashboard that we're going to feature today. So really quickly, I think for those of you who are just joining us, hopefully you're getting good audio over your computer, but if not, you can also dial in to this call or to this webinar at the number 303-248-0285. The access code is 3540893. And if you haven't got that jotted down while the screen is up, it's also, those numbers are also over here in the chat window. I'll also point out again to everybody that this audio, this call has been muted, which means you can hear me, I hope, but I can't hear you. So you can, if you're watching this with a colleague, you can feel free to talk between yourselves. You won't be interrupting the rest of us. We won't be picking up background noise from all over the country. So if you do want to, if you have questions, feel free to ask them using the chat box. I may, as I see them pop up, I may answer them immediately. I may put them off to the end of the session. We'll try to get this done in about 50 to 55 minutes, so there's some time at the end for you to come back to questions that didn't get answered earlier. So, as I said, this is a class that we're excited to be showcasing some new developments. There has been a Bloomerang class ever since we started Bloomerang Academy 3 years ago called, focusing on the tools on the dashboard, and we've sometimes called this class Paradise by the Dashboard Lights, and I am your instructor, Meatloaf. No, I'm not. That's not me. That's me. I'm Ron Newlin, a member of the Bloomerang support team for coming up on 4 years here, 35 years in the nonprofit world. This is, more importantly than my name and my picture, is my email address, ron.newlin@bloomerang.co. And that is .co, not .com. But I share that with you for a couple of reasons. We will be, as you know, this class is being recorded. It will be available on at bloomerang.co/academy/advanced classes by sometime next week. So if you've got a colleague you'd like to refer to it, that'd be great. Also, I will be emailing out my notes this afternoon. So if you are in fact watching this later on YouTube and not live with us on April 13th, jot down that email address. Let me know that you watched the class. I'll be happy to send you the notes with some screenshots of some of the filters that we'll be talking about using today to modify some of these really cool reports that we're going to be sharing with you. So what we're going to do in today's class is first, we're going to start with a real quick survey going around the face of the clock in counterclockwise order of all of the things on your dashboard. Most importantly, that thing in the upper left-hand corner that we call the donor retention wheel will be showing your recent upgrades to that. We'll go down and talk about the weekly, monthly, and yearly totals bars, which and explain what is and what's not included in that. Similarly, how to use the campaign progress bar and add additional campaigns to that feature on your dashboard. Real quick look at tasks. There's a whole separate class in Bloomerang Academy called being a Bloomerang Task Master that really digs deep into how to get the most out of that function. And then we're going to take just a really quick look at the Sustainability Scorecard, which is a recent feature that we're still kind of figuring out how to help you use the most. So there'll be a class coming on that. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it other than just a real quick look at what it consists of. Then mostly what I want to do today is to go back and demonstrate the new features on the donor retention wheel. We're going to be showing you that in the past in this class we've spent probably half the time of this class has consisted of teaching you how to painstakingly recreate the reports that give you the numbers that you have to replicate the numbers on your retention wheel. Who's included, who's not included, and now with our new features, you're able to just with a click of the button download those reports. So we don't have to spend time showing you how to recreate them. We're going to spend that time showing you how to customize them and how to add additional filters to do some helpful things, we hope, in improving your donor retention. Then we will talk a little bit about the difference in Bloomerang language between, I frequently use the term lapse donors to talk about the people who haven't given for over 2 years and therefore aren't even showing up on the retention wheel anymore. But that's not necessarily the same thing as inactive in Bloomerang. And we're going to have some recommendations about demonstrating reports for sorting your database with regards to identifying constituents as inactive. And then finally, we're going to return to those clickable reports, and we're going to talk about strategies for using them for donor retention. I'm going to also, the last thing here, this would be something you should jot down right now because we won't be seeing this particular URL again on today's session because once I close my slides, I'm not going to bring them back up again. But our founding CEO, now our CRO, Jay Love, just did a terrific webinar last week for our partner donor search on the importance of the second gift. And a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is using the donor retention wheel to identify your one-time donors who have suddenly gone from somebody who's given in the last year to somebody who hasn't given in over a year, and turning those into repeat donors. The big mantra here at Bloomerang is donor retention, and part of what Jay talks about in this session is that incredible change of status. When we talk in Bloomerang all the time, your donor retention wheel is showing you whether 40 or 50 or 35% of your donors are renewed. But for almost everyone, that number is a hybrid of two different numbers. Your first-time donors are typically only likely to make a second gift 20 to 25% of the time. Once somebody has made a second gift and become a repeat donor, then the odds that they will make a third, fourth, fifth gift jump up to 50, 60, 70%, and it's much easier to get a 2 or 3-time donor to keep giving and become a loyal donor than it frankly is to get that first-time donor to give a second gift. And so what we're going to be talking about today a lot is how to identify those people. Jay's class for donor search was a lot about the good language to use in getting them back. So I would really recommend that you take some time and follow up with this class by watching this class of Jay's on donor search. With that, let's go ahead and jump out of the slides and get into Bloomerang. And I'm going to sign into my own sample database here, which if you've watched a session before, you know this is where I do most of my demonstrations are this sample database of my imaginary donors with their imaginary contributions to my imaginary nonprofit. And you'll recognize this. And what we'll see today, actually let's click up here, let's change this to default. My default donor retention wheel this morning is showing that I right now have 50% donor retention, meaning that 51 of 102 donors, according to our calculation, have renewed. Now, this is not a total of every donor in your database. The 102 refers to the number of households, which includes, of course, organizations and individuals who are single, but the number of households in your database that made a gift between 12 and 24 months ago. And of those, and I have 102 of them, 51 of mine have given again within the last 12 months. So that's an even 50%. So again, this is not counting everybody in your database. It's not counting people whose last gift was more than 2 years ago. It's also not counting new donors within the last 12 months. This isn't a comprehensive summary of your overall health. It's just a very important tool at focusing on your donors that have given within the past 2 years and how many of them have turned into repeat donors. And we're going to get back in a moment to digging into that a little bit deeper. Let's look. The next thing I want to take a real quick look at as we're going around the wheel here. Raised this week, raised this month, and raised this year. Always refresh every morning. These numbers they're counting raised dollars in Bloomerang. Bloomerang makes a distinction between raised and revenue. Raised is the total of the donations that have come in plus the commitments you've received through pledges. So raised is donation. The transaction type is donation, recurring donation payment, or pledge. So if somebody makes, as I suspect we'll see the case here, $1 million pledge, even though it's payable over 4 years, it's going to show up on this chart. Raised this week means, and to finish that thought off, revenue in Bloomerang corresponds with your bank deposits. It's the actual money that's come in the door. So it's donations, recurring donation payments, and pledge payments as opposed to pledges. That's the difference between raised and revenue, but this chart in Bloomerang is always talking about raised. This week means Sunday morning through Saturday midnight. It's not a rolling 7-day calculation like this one up here is. It's Sunday through Saturday. Similarly, raised this month is the 1st through the 30th or the 31st. It's not a rolling 30-month total. And raised this fiscal year is since January 1st or July 1st, depending on what you have told us under settings. Settings, view all settings, check this real quick. My organization, you've told us at the time you set your database up, because this is this field marked in green means it's required, so you can't start using Bloomerang until you've told us whether your fiscal year starts on January 1st or July 1st, or in some rare cases, we do have some April and October 1 fiscal year starts. You can set that whatever you want. Bloomerang's dashboard is going to be calculating the money raised since the start of that date, of that fiscal year. So the next thing I want to look at here is the campaign progress bar at the bottom of your dashboard. Bloomerang is keeping track of your progress toward the various campaigns that you have set up if you have given that campaign a goal. So essentially, I've got almost all of my campaigns set up here: an annual campaign, a capital campaign, a membership campaign, and a gala. I can cycle through them if I want to see instead where I am on my progress toward my ongoing capital campaign is 80%. I've got a membership drive going on, or I've just got started toward a $200,000 goal and hardly any money raised toward it at all. Now, the way you set these up, you go to your settings and you click on campaigns, and you'll get a complete list of every campaign in your database. Right now, I'm only showing in blue my active campaigns. I can click on inactive and see, or I can click on all and get a list of all of them, including the ones that I have turned off, who are now grayed out. When you inactivate a campaign, it's still attached to the transactions that were assigned to it. You can still report on it, but an important thing is that these inactivated campaigns no longer show up when you're doing data entry. They no longer show up in the pull-down menu, so you can't accidentally assign a gift to an inactivated campaign and therefore have your reporting thrown off. But every one of your reports that are active, you have the opportunity to edit and set a goal for. And whatever goal you set here becomes what shows up on and what you're tracking your progress toward. There's also a start date and an end date field in here, and these are really only for your own for your own reference. You don't actually, and sometimes there's some confusion about this. These are not filters that exclude gifts marked annual campaign, so to only show the end date and the start date of the particular year you're in. If you have an annual campaign, if you have a campaign called annual campaign, you use it year after year after year, putting a start date and end date for this year is not going to limit the results from on this particular campaign progress bar, which is why I, for my membership campaign, gave it a date. If you want, so essentially what's happened here, and that's why you will see that my, if we go back to my dashboard, my old campaign progress bar called annual campaign was showing a progress of $888,000 raised, because that's several years worth of gifts, because I did not take the next step of limiting my annual campaign to 2018. My membership campaign, that's exactly what I did. So just something to be aware of in setting up your campaign progress bars. So yeah, I understand. I agree with Judy's comment there, and that may be something that comes down the road. But Karen, annual campaigns do not automatically reset every year, and that's why the progress bar is probably. I mean, it's a visual tool. It's probably not as effective as running reports. I think a better way of being able to see exactly where you are on your 2018 annual campaign is to create a report that's filtered by campaign as annual campaign and date is this year. The other trick here. If you're going to rely on the campaign progress bar, Karen, yes, it would be better to have a annual campaign 2018. The other thing, however, the other thing I want to point out about this is lots of organizations want to track both their progress toward an overall annual goal, but they also, membership is part of their annual goal, and their gala is part of their annual goal. And so if you want to use your 2018 gala And if you want to use the campaign progress bar to be tracking your progress toward a $100,000 goal for your gala, and you want to be using your campaign progress bar to be tracking progress toward your $200,000 goal for your membership effort, and those are both appeals, or they're both groups of appeals that feed into your overall budget for your unrestricted revenue for the year that you call an annual campaign. You're going to have to make a choice between which of those things you're tracking here anyway. Real quick to move up to tasks, because I'm really wanting to get back to the donor retention wheel. But of course, the other thing on the dashboard is you're tracking both your tasks and all tasks in your organization. Red is overdue, green is due more than a week from now, yellow is due later this week. You can click on My Tasks or on the bar to get a real quick report of what those tasks are. You can once you see them, you can go in and see, okay, so I had a task due earlier this week to invite Jessica Jones, to make a phone call to invite Jessica Jones to a lunch meeting. I can actually, from here, click to open that up in a new tab. I can point out that that the phone call was successful and we're meeting next week, and then I can up here complete that task and save it as an interaction. So it's now going to no longer be on my list, but it's going to now show up on Jessica Jones's timeline as an interaction. I've actually got her showing up with a future gift, with a gift in the future, but now this 4/13/2018 interaction is now on her timeline. The other way you can create a so you can create tasks from your dashboard by clicking the plus sign and adding a new one, and giving it a due date of today or at some point in the future. Invite. The purpose here is impact and cultivation. The channel, again, the task I'm giving myself is to make a phone call. Once I've made the phone call, I'll put it on my calendar. But I'm making a phone call to invite John Cage to a lunch meeting to discuss board involvement. And I can actually, by clicking on constituent, make sure that it's not only showing up on my record, but it's showing up on his record. The other thing we can do, I just saw another name there. I saw the name Luke Skywalker. You can add a timeline from the constituents record. You can add a task from the constituents record. Just go to the upper right-hand corner like you're adding a new donation, but add a task. I'm going to give on this one. I'm going to give to an associate, but by next week I want him to invite to a lunch meeting to discuss serving on our advisory council. The username here, I delegate the advisory council to my colleague Inigo Montoya. Purpose is impact or cultivation. Again, the task I'm giving him is to make a phone call. And here we don't have to mark which constituent it relates to because we're in Luke's record to begin with. Now we save it, and now if we go back to the dashboard, we'll see we've got the extra tasks there for Inigo. One really quick thing here. tasks update immediately. Everything on this side of the page only updates when you refresh your screen. So if you've done your data entry for today and your donor retention wheel hasn't moved yet, it's not going to move until we refresh the database, which happens every night at about 2 a.m. Eastern Time. But you can make it happen faster than that by going up here and hitting the refresh button. And of course I didn't make any changes, so nothing here is changing for me. Other than I want to go back to my default. 51, still 51 of 102. But so yeah, if you've been doing some gift entry and nothing's changed, refresh your dashboard, and that should do it. See a couple more questions. Calendar sync capability for the tasks. I know there's a request for that. I'm not sure if it's in the pipeline or not. I'll take a look afterwards and let you know. If it is in the pipeline, I'll send you the email. I'll send you the link so you can upvote it. If not, I can create that. I'm sure it's in the pipeline, or I'm sure the request has been made. Whether or not it has been approved and put on the schedule for being for the code being written and tested. I'm not sure. That's part of the process here, of course. When we do invite, and we actually pay quite a bit of attention to the features. If you go into Bloomerang, you go up here, you go to Help and Videos, and you go to Forums. We have in Bloomerang feature suggestions, where we have 574 user requested features, and you are welcome to go here and add your own, or to scroll through and look for something, to see if something's already been suggested, and if it has, you can open it up and make your own comment or add your own just add your own vote for it. And as you can see, there are several. There are a lot of things out there. So typically, if you're on a chat with one of us here at Bloomerang, we're not going to tell you just go find it yourself. We'll look it up for you and send it to you as an email. And frequently a lot of the things that our customers sometimes when our customers want something, it's incompatible with the way we want Bloomerang to work, and so we'll respectfully decline. Other times, we'll move something up the ladder based on the fact that our customers are really expressing a lot of interest in it. Okay, last thing on the dashboard, really quickly here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this at all because we're still actually getting a feel for how our early adopters are using this, and we're working on a separate class on this. But the sustainability scorecard is a series of questions that you are invited to answer for yourself and set yourself quarter by quarter goals for. And a lot of these things are, and then we measure your progress against these goals that you set for yourselves. So, for instance, we and a lot of what's on here are things that are a step beyond the renewal rates that you can achieve by just doing effective direct mail and email communications, like face-to-face meetings. How many face-to-face meetings are you setting for yourself every week, every quarter, and what's your progress toward them? So again, this is a recent development. We're still getting a sense of how our early adopters are using it, and we'll be developing a whole separate class on this. I just wanted to let you know what that is for the time being. Mostly what I want to do today, though, now is I want to show you how the new features in the donor retention wheel work. Like I said, a lot of what I used to do in this class was go into huge detail about the reports you had to build from scratch and save, but then every time you wanted to run them, you had to change the dates on them to find out who these people are that Bloomerang is telling you are retained and in danger of not being retained. Well, now you can simply put your cursor over the 50% of your donors who are retained, the light-colored slice of your wheel that are the percentage of your donors that have now gone more than 12 months but not yet 24 months since their last gift, and left-click, and you get the report that shows me my 51 households that made a gift, at least one gift, more than a year ago, more than 12, between 12 and 24 months ago, and have given again in the last 12 months. So you'll see the latest transaction date for everybody here is no later than 3/29/2018, and no earlier than 4/15/2017. Right now it's in alphabetical order. You can rearrange this by date, you can by amount, any number of different ways. If you take a real quick look at the filters, you'll see what we are doing here is we are looking at donors who have specific transactions that are donations, pledges, or pledge payments. That's raised revenue, raised dollars in Bloomerang, and that transaction is in the previous 365 days or today. And in addition to having a gift in that date range, they also have a gift, donation, pledge payment in the previous 730 days. Now we're also doing all kinds of things to clean this up. We are excluding refunded, written off pledges. We're not counting the schedules themselves, but only the only the payments on those schedules. So essentially, what we're doing here is we're looking at people who had gifts, who had raised donations within the past 365 days, and also within the last 730 days. That's, however, probably not the most important thing here. What we know about these people is to be on this list, they have to be two-time donors, right? They have to have, and so these people have already made that huge leap of becoming from being a one-time donor to a repeat donor. And hopefully you've got plans in place for communicating with them well, and they're going to hear from you this year in a number of different ways, invitations to special events, a spring appeal, a year-end appeal, etc. What I really think we want to focus on today is that other side of this report, and that is, let's go back to our dashboard. Yeah, we'll leave this page. It keeps flipping to my custom. I'll get that in a minute. Back to my default. So here's 51 households that what I know about them is that their last gift was more than 12 months ago, but less than 24 months ago. So if you want to look at the filters, the date is in the last 730 days, plus all these things that we're excluding, like refunds. But we are excluding from them people who have a specific transaction in the previous 365 days or today. So what we're getting here is people whose last gift was between 12 and 24 months, but we're excluding anybody who's given again. So what do we know about these people? Well, what we know about them is that it's been more than a year since they gave, but it's not been 3 or 5 or 10 years since they gave. And now we'll come back to this one more time before we're done here and talk about even cleaning, even drilling down a little bit deeper with these reports. But the other thing I want to show you, just in terms of what's built into Bloomerang now, is you can now customize this. Now, remember I told you the donor retention wheel, the default donor retention wheel, is always giving you a total of a calculation based on a rolling 365-day and 730-day time period. So every day it's going to recalculate, and it could change from day to day. We now give you the opportunity to customize this and do different things with it. So one thing you may want to do by customizing your retention wheel is we offer you the opportunity to change whether the date range is a rolling year or is a fiscal year or calendar year. So if I were to change mine to my fiscal year and save it, yeah, we'll see it change just a little bit. The percentage is very similar, but my numbers are down because I'm not actually, I'm looking at a shorter time period. And in fact, typically what you'll see if you want to be tracking your donor retention on your calendar year or fiscal year, what you will see is at the start of that year you're going to be at 0, and then as time goes by over the course of your year, you will move closer and closer to the to a rate that is only at the end of the year telling you something similar to what our default is telling you, which is how many people who gave 12 to 24 months ago have given again in the last 12 months. But some people want it that way, and of course, what the nice thing is, you don't have to choose one or the other. You can toggle back and forth between your custom setting and your default setting. Another thing that people will like to use the custom setting for is and this actually might get back to some of our questions earlier about the campaign progress bar. Let's go click on the settings thing again here, and we're going to go back and make it rolling year, but we want to exclude building fund, program fund, and library fund. We're only including unrestricted funds. And in fact, I'm also going to exclude my appeal of grants, because what I want to see here in my custom retention wheel is that I don't want kind of the unique one-off outlier contributions like a bequest or a grant. In fact, do I have a if I had an appeal called bequest, I might want to exclude it from this, because you're never going to get a repeat gift from a bequest. But essentially what you can do with this is by saving, you're not tracking every donor in your database. You're only tracking those sort of renewable annual gifts that feed your annual campaign with unrestricted revenue. And you'll see, so my numbers here are slightly different, and if they're significantly different than your than the default setting, then that's something to be aware of. One other thing I think you might want to consider: the Bloomerang's default donor retention wheel is counting, as I said, raised revenue. That's raised dollars, not revenue and raised are two different things. Raised dollars, donations, recurring donation payments, pledges. So it's not including soft credits. So you may want in your customize to include soft credits. And the reason you may want to do this, it kind of depends on how you most typically use soft credits. If you use soft credits almost only for matching gifts from corporations, it may or may not matter. But if you have a number, or even a small number, but if they're important donors, if you have important donors who do their giving through a family foundation or through a donor advised fund at the community foundation, and so you track, you list their, the gift when you enter it comes from the organization, but you soft credit the individual. Well, if you've got a board member who just renewed their annual support with a $5,000 gift through their donor advised fund, you don't want them showing up in your list of donors who haven't given for more than 12 months. So that would be a good reason for going to your dashboard, customizing your donor retention wheel to include soft credits. So really quickly, before I get into a couple of custom built reports that I want to show you, I have two other things I want to talk about. We've been talking here about donors that are retained, donors that are coming up on 24 months since their last gift. Once they move to 731 days since their last gift, they're not even showing up on this chart anymore. They are what, in my own personal vernacular, I would consider a lapsed donor. I use the donor retention wheel to focus on donors who are who have given within the last 2 years. I think anybody who's not given for more than 2 years is inactive. Is lapsed, which may be or may not be, depending on your own definitions and how you want to set up Bloomerang, may be the same as inactive. You'll notice in Bloomerang that I think most of our letters, in fact, if you open a Bloomerang letter and look at its filters, that one's not a good example, are going to automatically default to a, look at the filter here, excluding status is inactive or deceased. Well, obviously you don't want to send a letter to somebody who's deceased, but what makes somebody inactive? Well, you do. Bloomerang does not mark anyone inactive. That's up to you. But we do recommend that you pay some attention to that and that you kind of limit, both for the purposes of limiting your expenses on postage and printing, and also for sending the right message to your donor, that you not keep writing forever to everybody in your database. Which doesn't mean you that you delete people from your database. You want to keep their records. You may even want to write to them once a year, or email them once or twice a year in the future. But you don't want to include them in every single thing that you do. And so one of the things that we recommend that you do in Bloomerang is that once or twice a year you run a report where you identify people that you might want to change their status to inactive. And in fact, now I've only got 382 constituents in my database, so that's not too difficult for me to run a report and just scroll through them. If you've got thousands, you may want to do this in a couple different pieces. So for one thing, hopefully you've got constituents in your database that are in there as prospects. They've never given. So you may be able to find them you may have entered them with a custom constituent field of something like prospect or major gift prospect. So you'll see I have 34 constituents in my database that are in here as prospects. Let's also look at other people who are in here that haven't been coded, but they've never given. So how would I find them? Constituents has transactions, and then we're going to change has any transactions to has no transactions. So here's a list of everybody in my database, 144 people who are in my database that have, and many of whom have no transactions. Some of them are in there having been marked as a prospect. Others just kind of signed up with our email sign-up form or something like that. So I'm going to add a column to this report to see my attributes. And I'm going to get rid of a couple of columns here that I don't need for the purpose of scrolling through here. So essentially what I'm looking at here is my non-donors. I got 144 of them here. And I want to know which ones I want to, I can go through here and decide whether or not I want to keep them as prospects, or whether it's time to delete them altogether or mark them as inactive. And what I would probably do with this report is add another column for account number. I would export this to Excel. Are these people I want to inactivate? That's how I'll save this. I'll export this to Excel. I can go through and just delete the ones that I want to. I will either delete the ones. Well, what do I can add a column to this report. Add a column. Open this report up. Add a column for status. And then the ones here that I have no idea who they are, or I do know who they are, and I don't see any reason why I want to keep, that I want to keep communicating with them. At least I certainly don't want to keep spending postage on them every month. I mark them as inactive, and I just take these two columns and I import that status back in to inactivate those donors. Same thing then with the just because I think it's easier to do this sorting, it was a separate report for your donors and your non-donors. Let's create a constituent report from scratch where what we want to see is constituents who have transactions. So this way I'm getting rid of the 144 people I just looked at who have never given. I'm left with 260 constituents. I'm going to add columns for latest transaction date and probably amount. And in fact, let's add another column for lifetime revenue or lifetime raised, either one. And now when I scroll, and now what I want to do is I'm going to sort this latest transaction date. The two arrows at the right-hand side of any column header let you sort. One click makes them ascending or alphabetical. 2 clicks makes them descending. I've got a couple people here whose no latest transaction date probably means that's a soft credit. But from beyond those two, I start seeing here donors whose last gift was in 2012, 2013, 2013. Now some of these people are pretty good lifetime givers, so maybe even though I have not heard from them in 4 or 5 years, they've been pretty substantial givers. Here's a 0 amount that would be an in-kind gift, but you can start seeing down here some people who you haven't given for 5 years, 4 years, and the total amount of their giving is, here's somebody who hasn't given for 4 years and they've only given the one gift in their life. So you may want to start marking these people in the same way as we did with the other one. Export this to Excel, add the column for inactive and the column for account number, and go through and just look at the people where it's been 4, 5, 6 years since they've given, and particularly if they're only one-time donors or they're not significant donors, mark them as inactive. Doesn't mean you never write to them again. It doesn't mean you erase their records. It just means they're not going to be costing you postage and printing every time you send out a newsletter. And frankly, you're not giving them kind of a bad message that says, we can't take the time, we're not good enough stewards of donors' money to take the time to look and see whether you've ever given again or not. So those are the things I kind of wanted to show about inactive, and some advice on active and inactive donors. Finally, I want to go back and show you a couple of tricks that I would like to recommend with your new reports. So we now know and this keeps going back to my custom. I just want default. We now know that I have 51 households as of today that have gone somewhere between 12 and 24 months since their last gift. Let me download that report again. What's one other thing I'd like to know about these people? I'd like to know which ones of them are multiple time donors and which ones are one-time donors. So I'm going to add a filter to this default report. So I want constituents who have a gift in the last 730 days and where they have transactions, but where they have, instead of have any transactions, they have at most one transaction. I click that, and I see I have 8 donors of my 51 donors are first-time donors. All right, that's good to know. If I only had the opportunity once or twice a year to do a separate mailing to everybody on my database, I've looked at my calendar of events. I know when I'm doing a spring appeal. I know when I'm doing a year-end appeal. I know when I'm inviting people to my gala. I know in January I'm doing year-end receipts. But June would be a good time for me to run a report and write to all of my donors who are in that category that I would call lapsing. Only I do it once a year. So let's send one letter to everybody here where I can save this report. I'm going to save this report as one-time donors lapsing on for lapsing, and the date I'm doing this is for 13. Now I can create a letter that says, thank you for becoming a first-time donor to Ron's demo database last year with your donation of amount on date, or your donation of, if it's a constituent-based letter, with your donation of last donation amount on last donation date. Because since I've only got one gift, I don't have to worry about whether the database is finding the right one. I can remind them of the date and amount of their previous gift as I ask them to renew with a statement that says something about, it's been a year, we've missed you, but we appreciate your support and hope that you'll renew it. Similarly, after I've done that, I can take the same filter and change it to has at least 2 transactions, and I can save this report and use it as the filter for a letter that goes to everyone who is a repeat donor but has now gone somewhere between 12 and 24 months. And I can say to them, thank you for your recurring support or your consistent support or your repeated support of Ron's demo database. I can't believe it's been over a year since your last gift, but we appreciate from your giving history that you understand and support our mission. We hope you'll give us, you'll give again. Go a step further with this idea. Let's say you've got the opportunity. Frankly, you may have tons of donors, and this would be a huge mailing to do. On the other hand, you may also have the staffing or the volunteers that allow you to do this mailing once a month. Let's say the last Monday of every month. You're going to run this report, and you're going to do 2 different letters with it. So let's go back to the dashboard. And go back to my default. So let's download my list of 51 households that are 12 to 24 months ago. I don't want to see all of them. I want to focus this month on two groups. I want to focus on the people who just now turned from 12 months to 24 months. So, and I only want the ones that I'm going to change the date from the previous 730 days to the previous 395 days. So what I'm getting now is people whose last gift was 13 months ago, just 13 months ago, and then excluding anyone whose last gift was within the last 12. So now, with that change of the filter, I'm seeing that I have 7 households these people probably don't even realize that they don't think of themselves as lapse donors. They probably don't remember the last time they gave. They'd be surprised to know it's been a whole year. But it's a really good time, because it's only been a year, to remind them to say, hey, happy anniversary. It's been a year since your last contribution. In fact, we can still do the same thing within this group. And once again, look for specific transaction. Oops, not specific. Look for has at most 1 transaction. Oh, good. Well, so none of my 7 households are first-time donors. They're all repeat donors. So that's good. They're all repeat donors. I should be able to recapture over 50% of them by reaching out to them with a letter that points out to them exactly when and how much their last donation was. The other thing we can do with this report then is, let's put this back to 730 days. Oops. Now let's just start from scratch. Let's run our report again. My default report. Click on now I want to find those people whose last gift is 23 months ago. So instead of excluding only people whose last transaction was in the previous 365 days, I'm going to exclude anybody whose last transaction was the last 730 days, the last 700 days. So we're including everybody whose transaction was within the last 730 days, that's 24 months, excluding anybody who's given within the last 23 months. We're only finding those people who are coming up on 2 years since their last gift. And I've got 9 of them. So here's 9 people who I really want to make sure that I don't go 2 whole years without hearing from them. I can do the same thing once again. Constituents has transactions, has at most 1 transaction. I can see here that 5 of those 9 people gave me 1 time 23 months ago. It's really, really time to renew them or probably never see them again. And so honestly, in this situation, I don't think it would be a bad idea to let them know that you really appreciate their gift from 2 years ago. And you suspect they aren't even aware of how long it's been since that gift, but they made that gift because they appreciate, they appreciate your mission. They understand something about what you do. Let them know that it is your organization's policy to not communicate indiscriminately with everybody who's ever given, that you're going to keep a record of their gift, that you'll communicate with them once or twice a year, maybe by email, but that unless, you hope they'll renew their gift right now and continue to receive all of your communications, including your newsletter. So a gift at this time will assure that. But if not, we're going to take good care of your donors, of your donations and other donations by limiting our communication with you in the future. I honestly think that being right up front with somebody again, these are people who probably have, in the past 2 years since their last gift, they have probably declined to respond to a couple of year-end appeals. They've probably been invited to a couple of special events that they didn't come to. So I would say that probably just your standard appeal based on your mission is not going to affect them at this time. So why not try an appeal that's based on the fact that you know that it's been 2 years since their last gift, and that you do take good care of your donor list, and you'll continue to be grateful for their donation, but they'll hear from you on a more limited basis in the future, unless they renew their support at this time. So those are just some things I'm very excited about the fact that Bloomerang's new click-through reports on the donor retention wheel gets you that much closer to being able to do this type of segmentation with your renewal letters. That's the material I wanted to cover for today, and it is right now 12:02. So for those of you who are looking forward to getting on out about your day, have lunch appointments, maybe with a donor, I will say goodbye. I'll stick around for a couple more minutes for those of you who still have questions. But thank you, Carol. I hope you have a great weekend too, and look forward to seeing you at a future Bloomerang Academy event. I'll hang out for a while. Thanks.